Java Cafe, Java Fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java Fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Let me get this volume adjusted here. There we go. It is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024, and you are here in the Java Cafe for what we're calling Health Today. As you know, we had a segment called Your Healthy Java. We are bringing that back hopefully soon, where we came together twice a month and talked about health equity and issues associated with Black and Brown health disparities and how we get information out to the community. One of our guests was very instrumental with us since 2021, coming in and talking about issues around COVID, health disparities. She was recently with us around the data report that was commissioned by the Boston Public Health Commission. So first, I would like to bring in no stranger to the Java Cafe, Dr. Bisola Ojikutu. It gives me joy just to say her name. One, that I say it right and correctly.
It was perfect.
I'm getting there.
No. It was perfect. It was perfect.
That's one of the few I do well with. If you watch other shows, I butcher names a lot, but I think that is so important because there's heritage, legacy, and history there. And so let's also bring in, yes, ma'am. Let's bring in Mark Kennedy as well, a young man that I have seen in community for years. And when I saw the flyer, I said, I know this good brother. Mark, good morning to you as well. Please say good morning to the folks on behalf of the Health Commission as well.
Yes, thank you, Jimmy, and Dr. Ojikutu. Always good to see you.
Absolutely.
And good morning, Boston. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And so, Dr. Ojikutu, we're going to jump right in and talk about our issue. And this is, well, March was Colon Cancer Awareness Month. We were not able to get you scheduled for that, but this is, these issues hit families and individuals and patients 24/7, 7 days a week. And so if you could just let us know what the commission has seen in this space, and we'll talk with Mark as well, what the commission has seen in this space directly related to colon cancer. And then we'll also get into some conversation about the disparities between folks that look like you and I. And as I often say with folks that, and especially today, I'm a little bright, folks lighter than me. We'll frame it that way. We'll frame it that way. So Dr. Ojikutu, if you could just give us sort of an overview of where we are and any sort of level setting that you want to set since you've last been on the show.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy being on your show and these conversations and really helping to educate our residents, because it's so important to be in touch with and understand what's happening with our health personally, as in our families and our communities and across our city. So just taking big picture and just kind of looking colon cancer. So worldwide, it's the third most common cancer. Okay, so it's a common cancer. Here in the U.S., the lifetime risk of developing colorectal cancer, that's colon cancer and rectal cancer, is about 1 in 24. The risk is higher in men versus women. Okay. So this is certainly something that we should pay attention to. I'm hoping that here during this segment, we could talk about prevention, because it is preventable and it's something that we can do to protect ourselves, and we can spread the word to our family members, certainly. So let's zoom into Boston, though, so we really understand what's happening here. So if you look at our Health of Boston data, now Health of Boston is probably one of the most important things that we do as a Boston Public Health Commission. We create a series of reports that really give a broad snapshot of what's happening in Boston in terms of health across a number of different disease areas. So cancer is just one of many. Please take a look on our website at those reports. They really are written for a lot of people to understand them. And certainly if you have any questions, you should always feel like you should reach out, which I've said before. So if you just think about cancer in general in Boston, cancer mortality overall, that's from all causes, it has decreased for all of our invasive cancers, and that includes colorectal cancer. So this, I think, is really important for us to recognize. And I think that part of that is because of screening. And I think this is a great thing, very important. But I do think that we should pay attention to some very concerning findings. And I think that's why the Boston Public Health Commission, led by Mark, Mr. Kennedy, is doing some wonderful work to spread the word about colon cancer. So if you look at 2019 and 2020, colorectal cancer was the second leading type of cancer mortality in Boston. And if you break it down by race and ethnicity, Black men have a mortality rate from colon cancer that is twice as high as the mortality rate amongst white men. Okay. Now, just stepping back to mortality and think about just incidence. So the amount of disease, the newly diagnosed cases, Black male residents have an incidence rate that is significantly higher than white men. And that's not just for colon cancer, that's for all invasive cancers. So this is an issue that we need to tackle, not just about colon cancer, but across the board. And let's just turn to Black women. You look at mortality from colorectal cancer, more than 70% higher than white women. So then you have to ask yourself, so what's going on here? So certainly, I think the first thing I do as a clinician is I think, okay, so what about screening? Because I said, this is a screenable, this is a preventable cancer. So we look at our screening data here in Boston, and what we find is that overall, Bostonians are not getting screened at a very high rate for colon cancer. Only 44% of Bostonians over the age of 50 have been screened in the last 5 years. That's problematic. Okay. Break it down by race. And again, rates that are suboptimal. So this is certainly something that we're concerned about. And this is certainly something that that Mark has been working on for many years.
Let me just ask a couple of questions, Dr. Pasola, because that was, and I fluctuate between Dr. B, Dr. Pasola, and Dr. Ojikutu. Dr. Pasola
Pasola's mine too.
Well, we have to give you your honor and your flowers for what you've achieved in this, being a Black woman. I'm always going to name that. There was a lot there. And so a couple of questions before we delve into checking in with Mark, who is a Black man in this space. And so he can definitely, speak to this, and we'll find out a little bit of his story as well. But you said in the last 5 years, well, first thing you said was the amount of diagnosis is decreasing, or mortality, the mortality of death amounts is decreasing. Interesting. You say that may be due to more screenings, but we know, Dr. B, that during COVID, and you're capturing this 5-year period, screenings, were very interesting before COVID. We weren't going in. And then during COVID, because of everything associated with that. And so can you speak to, go ahead.
So the decrease in cancer mortality rate, I was really talking cancer overall, and that includes colorectal cancers, but it's all of them.
Yes,
it's really 2015 to 2021, even before that, decreasing. And part of this is due to screening, but it's also due to increased improvements in treatment. Okay. So there are things that are happening in the cancer space that are good. Okay. And that's something that as a message I want to pass on, that things are treatable. We can do something if we know it's there and we catch it early, we can do something about it. So I think that is that's one of the major messages here. And that should even get people, wanting to find out if there's a problem sooner.
Because there are ways, and maybe toward the end, we can talk a little bit, because a lot of those treatments sometimes are found through clinical trials, and it's important that Black and brown folks be made aware. And so, Mark, you've been patiently waiting. Dr. B has so much information. This is something that is a passion place for her as far as getting information out. And so thank you for your patience. Sir, please introduce yourself. This is your first time. Say hello. And if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of your direct and personal relationship to this space.
Very good. Dr. Ojikutu can have all the space she needs anytime she wants it. So the patience is not the factor here, okay?
Yes, sir.
I'm a native Bostonian, and I got into this space in a very interesting way. And I'll give you the short version, because I could talk for a long time about this. But here's the bottom line. I was actually running a consulting business in the late 1990s, and a friend of mine got a job from the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to find out why people of color weren't going to Dana-Farber to get their treatment for cancer. I actually got subcontracted to participate in that work, and I designed and delivered the focus groups. I wrote the report, sent it over to Dana-Farber. It ended up on the then CEO's desk. I am assuming that he found the results interesting because we got a call, took him in to talk more about it, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing some additional work. So he connected me with their genital urinary, I can talk, I've done it before, oncology area, which is where prostate cancer lives, of course.
Yes, sir.
And I spent 3 years working with some of the leading GU oncology specialists, looking at ways to talk with men about prostate cancer screening. And the reason why I tell you all that in the context of your question is that was my entry into public health, and in particular population health, understanding that there is an additional burden with certain parts of our population that's different from everybody else. I got intrigued. I literally walked away from my consulting business and took a full-time job at Dana-Farber, worked there for 13 years and ran their public-facing education and screening campaign for prostate cancer, right?
Yes.
I got my MBA, went on to take a job as the executive director of the Massachusetts Prostate Cancer Coalition, moved from there to taking a national director of outreach and education position at the Prostate Health Education Network until I got my dream job, which is the one I have now at the Boston Public Health Commission. Because this allows me to not only address issues with the prostate cancer space, but in all of the screenable cancer spaces. And that's what I've always wanted to do.
Thank you for giving us that journey, because I think it's important for folks to know. Folks have seen Dr. Pasola before, but folks have that personal relationship to understand your personal connection to this space. And so Dr. B has referred to you a couple of times in reference to giving more clarity. And one of the things she talked about is sort of the screening and prevention items that are out there. And so in this segment, if you could just talk to, well, let me back up a little bit. One thing that stood out to me, Dr. Pasola, is that this is not just a male disease. And I also want to, lately, I have been very sensitive to, and even how I articulate it, there are women with trans experience that biologically, Dr. B, still may have to have this screening. In these, I move in a few different health equity spaces.
Sure,
and
of course.
it's important that we just cite that as well. And I thought about that because the other thing you said was women do also get colon rectal cancer. And so it was a lot there before we come back to Mark. But can you just, that is something that is always in my mind when we talk about like breast cancer and cancers that are typically associated with how the gender in which, biologically speaking.
So I think that's an incredibly important point, and we need to be more inclusive when we're discussing health in general. Colon cancer is not about gender. Colon cancer impacts men, it impacts women, it impacts people of transgender experience. It can impact everybody. And I think that is why we want to make sure that everybody's hearing this message. I think probably what people need to first understand is that, colon cancer starts with abnormal growths. Okay, so we're talking about polyps. These are oftentimes precancerous, and that's what makes it preventable. So you can screen and remove those polyps and then change the screening cycle, make sure you're checking up on people regularly, because it doesn't sort of happen right away. There's a period of time, sometimes up to 10 years before a growth, that abnormal sort of precancerous polyp can become a cancer. So that gives us time to really continue to screen and to make sure that people are engaged in healthcare. So that's really important. I think that it's important for us also to understand, particularly I'm speaking to us as healthcare providers. And the thing is, Jimmy, you're a health educator too. You're a And so as we're thinking about how we explain this to people, I think it's important for us to understand that that people need to get, why are we doing this? What is the point of screening? And we need to understand that even if I tell you, colonoscopy is really the preferred and most commonly utilized screening option, and we'll talk about the screening option in a second, it's important to understand that the best screening test is oftentimes the one that the patient is able to do and complete. You know what I mean? I have seen many a patient who just cannot do the prep, and we can talk about that, cannot do the prep, or they don't want to go through the anesthesia, or they don't have somebody to drive them home. Do you see how that works?
Yes,
because you have, and so they say, well, what else can I do, Dr. Ojikutu? What can I do? And then we have to offer them other options, even though, for example, like I said, colonoscopy is still our preferred and most commonly utilized screening option. And the reason that it is because it can work as sort of both a preventative and a therapeutic, right? So preventative, meaning that you can take the polyp, go send it to the lab, see if it's cancerous. And like I said, you can follow it up. You know what I mean? But you can also get lesions that are early on, that are early cancer. So you just snip them out. You're removing them. And then you're talking to the patient about further treatment options. Do you see what I'm saying? So you can both do prevention and you can do therapeutics, so treatment in a sense. See, this is different from our other screening tests, right? So there's some other things that we can do, which I think people have talked about, and I think they're important for us to understand. One of them is virtual colonoscopy. So I have a number of patients who will come to me and say, well, I heard about this virtual thing where I don't have to, go under anesthesia or conscious sedation. So how do I do that, Dr. Ojikutu? Because I don't really want the colonoscopy. And what I have to explain to people is that for an average risk person, somebody who cannot have anesthesia, somebody who just, like I said, doesn't have a way to take a whole lot of time off from work. There are a lot of reasons why this might work. I said, okay, we can try this. Okay. But that doesn't mean that you don't still offer them the colonoscopy and say, well, we could try it this way. So with virtual colonoscopy, it's something we do every 5 years. You still have to prep. So you're still taking, a laxative. It can be, a large amount of liquid, or you could do liquid in pills, that it turns people off, but this is what it is, and this is important for your health. And so what happens is essentially they do a CT scan, which allows for 3D images of your colon. So you're really able to, if you watch it, you can look at it on YouTube. You can actually watch it go in, and you can see all the different sort of curves. You can see what a polyp might look like, see what a growth might look like, and I think it's a very useful tool. Again, it is for people average risk, not somebody who already has a significant family history, or already has a cancerous growth, or has multiple polyps. You don't want to necessarily do it on those individuals. It's also good for people who are older, elderly, and say you may be thinking, oh, well, they might be a risk of a colonoscopy, which is very, very small, but you're trying to offer people the options, right? And I think that's important in healthcare, because you want people to know that there are different strategies. Now, the other non-invasive means, or sort of group of non-invasive means of screening for colon cancer, is really to look for blood in the stool. Okay. Now, we can do that using what we call fecal immunochemical testing. So it's called FIT testing. You do it annually on a single sample. You can add DNA, meaning you look for certain DNA markers, and that's actually, FIT DNA. We call it Cologuard. You might have heard of that. I prescribe it. You take a sample, goes to the lab, comes back. But the reality is, if something's abnormal, you're going to colonoscopy, right? So you're ending up at colonoscopy anyway, in many cases. So just to put that out there to people, that there are options, but if something is wrong, you want to go to that sort of gold standard screening test of colonoscopy. Mark, did you want to add anything to that?
Please do. And I just want to recap real quick. You said that because often in this practice, our patients sometimes don't have the information. And so colonoscopy is the recommended best. However,
Yes.
Dr. B and other providers understand that there may be issues that you cannot. However, if you're in a provider, you have a family history, you're asking about this maybe after seeing today. If that doctor doesn't offer that colonoscopy, you ask about it, get the information, and then let them back into other ways. And so, Mark, again, I know you said patience isn't a thing here. And so we appreciate it. But you see, and you work with her. So you see when Dr. Pasola gets going, because she comes from an academic medical teaching space over there at Harvard and whatnot, MGH. So I'm enjoying this, not the topic per se, but the fact that we are getting this very detailed information out to community. Mark, please jump in and cover whatever you would like, sir.
Well, there isn't really much to add, obviously, but let me just say one thing. We want to make sure that people understand family history in a very specific context, because if you think about a fair amount of Black families, either they don't have the conversation, or they have the conversation and it gets sort of truncated because people don't like to say certain things. So the bottom line is you don't always know, right? Yeah. Somebody might have a family history that they don't know about. Someone may have something else going on that they don't know about. One of the things that Dr. Ojikutu touched on, and I just want to bring it up again for just a second, is that there's a genetic component to the risk. A lot of people look at me crazy when I say the words Lynch syndrome. Well, what is that, right? Well, there's a genetic predisposition that you can find out about in your late teens, early 20s. And that completely changes your possible trajectory for colon cancer. One of the things that sort of highlights that is, in addition to all the things that Dr. Ojikutu talked about, we've been noticing, I say at least for the last 20 years, a steady 1, 2, 3 per annum increase in late stage colorectal cancer diagnosis in people not only younger than the guidelines age to get screened, but significantly younger. We all know about Chadwick Boseman.
Yes.
That was starring Black Panther. I actually had the pleasure on March 1st of meeting his widow, Simone, talking about the campaign that she has been leading in her late husband's honor. But the point is, we need to be thinking about this much, much earlier. And again, to Dr. Ojikutu's excellently articulated point, this is unique in that when you think about the intervention, which is the colonoscopy, this is actually very preventable. There are modifiable risk factors that you can also take into account, but this is unique. You can't really make that claim for a lot of other cancers, but if people are doing the things that they are able to do, this can actually be prevented. So again, if someone's not going to do the colonoscopy, even though we know that's the gold standard, then let's talk about the stool-based test. So let's talk about those other options. But to both your excellent points, we know the colonoscopy is the gold standard. We have to at least put it on the table. And if people want to go a different direction, that's fine. But to Dr. Ojikutu's point, if you have an abnormal result on any of those other tests, colonoscopy becomes a diagnostic tool instead of just a screening tool. So you're going to end up there anyway. But at the end of the day, a lot of average risk people are getting colonoscopy. So maybe we're even overusing it a little bit. So sometimes we can go into this with something that's a little less invasive and see if people actually need the colonoscopy. And when that's the case, it's available.
Dr. B, I know you have to jump at about 9:30. Get ready to finish and add to Mark's point, and then there are a couple of medical related questions I may want to ask.
Yes.
I am going to ask rather. Yes. And so please add to what Mark said as well.
Absolutely. No, Mark has hit on some just critical points that we don't talk about enough. I think one of these is family history. Now, I have to tell you, when I talk to many of us, we just don't know our family history. Exactly. We don't know that, father died at 40, from colon cancer, just don't know, and are not talking about the fact that somebody had polyps, you know what I mean? And these are the things that do put you at risk because nobody's talking about it. And that's what we need to do more of. We need to be more open and discuss these issues. Two, I think it's important because Mark mentioned this issue of increased cases amongst young people. So 2 points. One, the recommendation. So the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, a few years back, decrease the age for recommended screening for average risk individuals. So it was 50, and 50 was always out there, because that's when you start to get your colon cancer screening. Decreased it to 45. Okay, so when you are reaching 45, your doctor should be talking to you. All of my patients in their early 40s, I'm talking to them. I'm getting them ready, getting them prepped, because I think that it is about shared decision making with your patients about how we want to approach colon cancer screening. The other thing that I think is really critical that I'm worried about, and I think all health care providers and folks in this field are thinking about, is, this issue of younger folks having increased rate of colon cancer in younger people, concerning, because I think we're missing it, because we're not talking about stool changes. We're not talking about the symptoms that they may be experiencing. Oftentimes colon cancer has no symptoms, but it's not that people are coming to their doctor and they're saying, you know what, I've been having, increased frequency of stools. I've noticed blood in my stool, thought it was hemorrhoids, but it's not, or I've been losing weight, or I've, just had symptoms that are concerning and that we as healthcare providers should be following up on. But that person may be thinking, but I'm 30. I'm 29. Why do I need to worry about that? That is the concern, because if we don't get the word out there, then you have young people walking around having changes in their body and not talking to anybody about it.
Dr. Basola, if I could get very personal and chime in here, just in the last 2 weeks, one of my young men that I used to mentor became aware, went in for one thing, and I got a text saying, hey, they want to rule out colon cancer at 32 and was rushing for the colonoscopy. Now, this is why having the information is so important, because we discussed, could be hemorrhoids. Are you straining when you stool and things like that? But based on what Mark just said about the potential to screen and look at certain genetics at younger ages, and what you're saying now, one, I'm 52. That age was dropped after I had turned 45, and everybody knows that when this comes up, I still got to schedule and go get my test, Jesus. But
No, we're with you. We're with you. You need me to talk. We need to talk offline. I'm with you, Jimmy. There are many people like you. Don't think this is nothing to be, there's nothing at all to be ashamed. You know what I mean? This is what it is. A lot of people don't want to go. It can be, something it's a challenge, a barrier we have to overcome. And this is why we're talking about it. And this is why I talk about it freely. We had a Women's History Month celebration the other day. I said, go get your colonoscopy, go get your pap smear, go get your mammogram. I'll come with you. I need to schedule mine too.
Dr. Basola, let's name that we're getting, there is how we get through some things, a serious subject, always Black joy. But there is a seriousness to this, and we remember this sort of joy here when we're thinking about this. And so I know you do have to get ready to run in a minute. We're going to continue with Mark for a few minutes. But thank you, because now I'm empowered, one, by what Mark mentioned about the age thing, and two, I now have information as a health educator that, because at first, I was like, wait, are y'all trying to make money off of testing? The boy's only 30 something years old. Like, what are y'all doing? So now when I get off of here, I'm going to be like, yeah, make sure they're following up and everything. And so I thank you for that. Dr. B, before you have to go, you shared so much, but is there anything else that, get your colonoscopy for everybody? Our sisters, get your pap smear. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I need to just say one thing, and I do have to run, and Mark is going to flow, I'm sure, on many different topics when I'm gone. But let me just say that, my father actually died from colon cancer in 2019, and we didn't talk about cancer. You know what I mean? Even he was a healthcare provider. He was a podiatrist, an intelligent, really intelligent man. He's the one who pushed me into going to medical school. And so what I gathered when I talked to my siblings about this is there was an enormous amount of medical mistrust. And that, you brought up this issue of like, what are they doing to me? So anytime I went with him to the doctor, anytime I sat with him by his bedside, there was always just a lot of questions, a lot of skepticism, him wanting me to go research something addition to what the gastroenterologist said. And I understand that medical mistrust is rational. It's reasonable for us, okay, because we know what's happened. But you have to, one, ask the right questions. Two, come to people you do trust. We have to do better. And we're doing this with the campaign and with our community health workers, with our outreach, getting the information out there, using trusted people, trusted faces, trusted people who we know care about us and people like us. And we need to work with the healthcare system. We need to decrease the institutional racism, the medical racism, the treatment that has been and still in some cases is received by people who look like us or who are of lower socioeconomic status. This is what is happening, and we can't allow this to cause these inequities anymore. We need to stop this.
Dr. B, before you go, I just want to introduce one other term. I got to talk with who I'm sure you both know. Dr. Rick Lee was with Beverly Moy a few weeks ago, getting her award with the Ellie Fund. And in that panel, I came up with the term called medical capitalism. That is a serious point as well. And so there is just so much. Hopefully I'll see you in June. The Health Equity Compact is doing their thing. We have some other things going. I think we're going to be together on April 19th for finally the Healthy 617 with our young people that you got to see last summer. So Dr. B, get on that other call. Do what you have to do. Okay. Please tell the team and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Appreciate you, Mark. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. B. Mark, we're going to just take a quick break and go more into conversation with you, and we'll be back in just 2 seconds, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm a very sensitive person, and I feel the pain of my people. They know me, they call on me, and I assure them that I'm not a provider, but I am one who cares. I always say to them, well, it's better to know than not to know, because if you know, you can do something about it. Think about the loved ones around you. Think about the ones that love seeing you come through that door. Take the step and get tested. That's it.
Save lives and get screened for colon cancer. For more information, visit boston.gov/cancer.
Mark, that thing right there. First of all, I got to say, shout out to Joanne. It says a Winbush there, but we go back to Heath Street Projects, a Silver, and to all her other family. And so it's good to see her. I remember her working at Martha Elliott way back in the days, I believe, and just seeing her around community. So
she was working at Martha Elliott when I met her as well.
Wow. And so it's just amazing. There is good that comes up out of Heath Street. And so I needed to say that there. And so, Mark, Dr. B shared so much.
Of course.
I have to ask, while we understand that women, general cancers is not, cancer does not discriminate against gender or on either side or in between the spectrum or non-identifying. However, there is this air among us of folks that share you and I's demographic. That is Black men. Can you, sir, with all the disparities and the larger impact on us, how important is it, sir, that we pay attention to this? And please reiterate that piece about late 20s, because that thing is there needs to be a whole campaign just around these brothers that are, in this age group to start. If there's family history, if there's a change, as Dr. B said, in your body and you got blood in your stool, and there was also a question we didn't get to ask Dr. B about, is stress related to some, functionality or dysfunction in the bowel system? So more on the medical side of that one, but can you speak to brothers, sir?
I can, and let me just do one thing while it's on my
mind. Do what you need to, sir.
So I don't forget it. We talked about early 20s, late teens, early 20s, not
late teens, early. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's back it up 10 years.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Second of all, this family history piece, Jimmy, really speaks to when the screening is supposed to start. And
okay.
We alluded to that, but there's one particular fact that I want to just say out loud.
Yes.
When you know your family history, particularly when you know the age of the person in your family that was diagnosed with colon cancer, that now sets when you start screening. So remember what Dr. Ojikutu said. It was always start at 50 if you're at average risk. They bumped it down from 50 to 45.
Yep.
They say if you have a family history or if you're at high risk for any other reason, it should start at 40 or 10 years before the age of the family member that was diagnosed. So as for example, we know that Chadwick Boseman was diagnosed with late stage colon cancer in his late 30s. I think it was 38.
Can I just point one thing out? And if you got to write down something to remember this, Chadwick Boseman was Black Panther.
Yes.
Wakanda. He was rich.
Yes.
And it does not matter because you said late stage. And so to me, what I hear is with all that
colon cancer at younger than 40 years of age.
So with all that money and all, and I say this but please hear my heart when I say this, with all the resources that was available to him, he was diagnosed late and still succumbed. And so I had to bring that out because if he at that level, notoriety, celebrity, money, let's keep it 100. These companies take out life insurance policies and stuff on these actors and whatnot. Yeah. If at that level, it was late diagnosed, imagine everyday Joe Schmo, Jimmy and Mark.
Exactly.
Woo.
Exactly. So my point is, we know that Chadwick Boseman was very well kept physically. His body was a physical specimen, right? I know from his wife that he ate a very healthy diet. Exercise, diet, the modifiable risk factors that we talked to everybody about, he was doing all of those, right? So the point that you're making that I want to amplify is, yes, anybody can get it. You said it. It doesn't discriminate, right? But here's back to my point. Assuming, because I don't know this for a fact, I don't know if Chadwick and Simone have children, but children would need to start getting screened for colon cancer 10 years before he was diagnosed. He was diagnosed stage 4 at 38. They should be getting tested at 28.
At 28.
Remember, the guidelines say 45 if you're at average risk.
Average.
If we're not talking about family history, we don't know if we're at high risk or not. So we don't know how soon we should be starting if we don't have a family history context. This is why it's so important. Right? The bar gets set in terms of when you start because the messaging says average risk. But if you don't know that you're at high risk, you may jump to a test that's less effective than colonoscopy because you don't know that that's where you're supposed to go.
Yep.
And B, you don't know when to start if you don't know your family history. We got to have those conversations, Jimmy.
It is very hard, from the adage, especially among our community, what goes on in the house stays in the house. This, I think, often, let's also name that some of our elders would never divulge, male and female, would never divulge to the family that one, they're dying, and then two, you don't find out what they passed from.
Exactly.
And so these are elements and factors that play into us not knowing our family history. And so if we're walking away with any major tools today, one is, or a few of them is average risk. And if you would like to redefine what average is, if it will tell me if I'm wrong, either lack of knowledge, or if you have the knowledge, lack of family history, generally with cancer, but specifically in this case, colon cancer, that presents and leaves you at average risk. If you do not have or observed blood in your stool, if there's not been change in your presumably digestive system, something like that, average risk.
Pay attention to
a couple of examples. I will just reiterate. Mark and I are not clinicians. Our clinician had to go in clinique and do some other things. Right. And so high risk, let's reiterate, family history, changes in body, blood and stool. 2 examples. one of the other things is, though difficult sometimes, we need to have these conversations with auntie, with uncle. And I will go as far as put you on the spot, Mark, and ask, are there any pointers to maybe begin and ask, hey, Uncle Joe died, Auntie Sally died. There's some, folks are whispering, talking, may have been cancer or whatever. How does someone that wants to have this conversation, how would you suggest they begin it with the elder or, someone?
Yeah.
You don't
So
mind. I know it's on the spot, but we want to get as many tools as possible.
No worries. So those dynamics are going to be very personal. Those dynamics are going to be very specific to a particular
Each
family
situation.
context. Yep. So we get all that, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I can't imagine anybody, Jimmy, that's going to tell you not to go take care of yourself physically.
Yes, sir.
Right? If I'm talking to a parent, whether it's my direct parent or an elder in my family, no one's going to say, Mark, please don't take any measures to take good care of yourself. They're not going to do that. So when you begin to ask them, I just got insurance, I just got a doctor, and I'm going to start, looking for things to make sure that I'm healthy. And they're going to go, yeah, that's fine. So one of the things that my doctor is probably going to ask me so that they can make sure that they're giving me the best service that they could possibly give me is, what kind of history do I have in my family for some of the common ailments that he's going to check me for? What can you tell me to help my doctor serve me better?
That's
what
right.
Can you tell me to help me ask the right questions? What can you tell me to help me advocate for myself? Right? Now, the parent may, again, continue to be guarded about what they share and don't share, but you don't win if you don't play. So you got to ask the question. And again, if you couch it from the standpoint that I know you care about me, so help me take care of myself, right?
Yep.
Empower me to take care of myself, right? And we need to do that. We need to understand on a macro level, Jimmy, the connection between family history and overall health.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There's a real strong connection.
Diabetes, high blood pressure.
Exactly.
Come.
Right. And of course, the other piece is what you and Dr. Ojikutu were talking about, this inherent medical mistrust that is honest, it's real, it's legitimate based on what we know about clinical trials and things of that nature, right? And to your earlier point about clinical trials,
I was going to
the mistrust piece literally precludes us from having any interest in it. But when you think about it, the fact that we didn't participate in those trials is a reason why we should now, because they're developing now personalized medicine and tailored medicine so that if they have that information on us, we know that these therapies will actually work.
So can we just break that down a little bit more? The reason that clinical trials are so important when it comes to Black and brown people, let's be 100. These are trials. They are trying something in their attempt to try to make the best vaccine, whatever it is that they're creating to treat things, types of cancer, diabetes. The way that they find out that if it has the least impact on the general public, very inclusive of us, is to have some of us in the clinical trial.
Exactly.
Oftentimes, because there's not a lot of us participating, unfortunately, they don't find out the failure of an approved drug. They'll meet the minimum standard of having, our type of DNA, but we're very unique people. And so we don't find out that there's an issue largely among Black and brown people or whatever until it's released. And so the medical mistrust, but that we also, now we have people like Dr. Kizzy over at the Chan Public Health. We have Black and brown women and leaders that were involved in the vaccination. We have people like you that's in the industry. And so we do need to start giving more ear to participation in clinical trials. And let's also name some of these clinical trials are actually providing levels of treatment right now.
So let me jump on that because you're making some really great points. So first of all, again, I told you that I got into this through the prostate cancer lens.
Yes, sir.
Right? Now, there was a major trial in the United States. It's referred to as the PILCO trial, prostate, lung, colorectal, and ovarian, PILCO, PLCO, right? The accrual, Jimmy, of Black people in that trial was less than 4%. But let me tell you why I make that point. Even at that time, the data was showing that men of color were getting diagnosed with prostate cancer about 65 to 70% more often than white men, and were dying from it 3 times as often as white men.
But we're only
So what you would think is that the researchers would say, we should match the burden of the cancer with the accrual of the study.
Yes, sir.
If that group is having this problem more often, we should have more of them in the trial. Because guess what they did? They get the results of the trial and they generalize it to the entire population, even though the trial had a majority proportion of a specific type of individual, right? So now when we talk about PSA testing for prostate cancer, we know that high-risk men are at an increased risk for prostate cancer, but doctors are saying, well, the PSA doesn't really give you a benefit. It causes as much harm as it does a benefit. Because for white men who get prostate cancer less often, the PSA may not be as advantageous. So what happens is Black men get literally thrown under the bus, right? We don't want to screen generally, because we don't know that the PSA testing actually saves lives, but we know that in Black men, the potential for it to save lives is much higher because we're at higher risk. And what doctors are doing is they're saying, well, we're going to use the generalized data that says that this test is really not that important, and we're going to treat everybody that way. And we're not going to differentiate between average risk and high risk.
This is Mark, you just helped me because how can I frame this? I've been approached to support the platform with some indication of talking about the importance of clinical trials. It is a transparent, authentic space. And you just, because I was struggling over a year in I don't know, and individuals believe they're, in interacting with them, they get it, but it's still big pharma. But in listening to you just influence my decision and in that space to be even more of an advocate. What you said about it's not going to be framed verbatim, but where the issue is where the percentage of the data or the data sets in this clinical trial research that has to match. You said 60, 30, the percentage of disproportionate impact on Black men, but we're only 4% of that trial that happened.
Exactly.
Sir. So, this is why I say again, at no level that you and Dr. Basola, but you got on the ground folks like me, you got folks like you and Dr. Basola in spaces, you got Dr. Betancourt and them moving in policy and Rick Lee and them. That will hopefully increase the level of trust that we have, in order to change the system, some of us have to be in it. And also, we're not doing this fight for equity to open a door. And then when you open the door, there's only 2 people standing there. And so there is a balance of the mistrust, what they did to us, to our women, and everything is real, but things are changing. They haven't changed. Right. ING. And us taking advantage of the resources, of the clinical trials, of the information is a true form of resistance and indicator of the change.
And Jimmy, let me add to that, because you're absolutely right. But I want to actually introduce another side of this conversation.
Yes, sir.
That's the researchers themselves. Remember, it's a lot of people that aren't like us that are trying to do research with and involving people like us. First of all, they don't know us. They don't know how to talk to us. They don't know how to recruit us. And when these trials say you need to either have a minimum number of high-risk people in your trial or justify why you don't, they basically end up saying, well, we tried, we just couldn't get anybody. Because they didn't know what they were doing and how to do it. Now, I actually sit on a group whose job it is to help researchers actually look at the structure of their trials, particularly from the standpoint of accrual of people of color, right? And at the end of the day, what we all know to be true is this. These people don't know enough to understand how to get us in the trials. So what do? They say, okay, they're low income, they're low literacy. So we're going to just sort of design the trial, think about that recruitment as an afterthought, and throw a bag full of $25 Stop and Shop gift certificates at us to try to get us to participate in the trials, right? There's a lot of things broken, Jimmy, in this clinical trials research system, right? So what we basically do is we literally sit with people and say, look, bring the trial design to us. I sit on a group that's associated with Harvard Catalyst, Harvard School of Public Health. It's the Community Coalition for Equity and Research. And what these researchers do is they bring their study to us. They describe it to us, and we literally go up one side and down the other about, here's what you're not doing in terms of recruitment. Here's what you're not doing in terms of respecting people's time. Here's what you're not doing in terms of being able to communicate in the right ways to actually get people. And oh, by the way, why aren't you coming to the community when you don't have a trial? Why aren't you coming just to get to know us and understand the things that make us tick, right? Don't just come to us after the fact and treat this as an afterthought. We're doing a lot of work in this space, and we hope that in the future, we're not just redesigning trials on a one-by-one basis. We want to rewrite the way that researchers and communities interact.
Mark, one, I'm exhausted. That's an indicator of a good interview. You and Dr. Basola just helped a lot. Well, let's talk about the macro level. The level of information and sort of a layman's approach to the reality of a lot of this. Thank you for that, because it is real. And we need to make sure that we make sure that everybody understands the communication. Well, I'm not going to say that because that might be perceived incorrectly, but we just need to make sure that we understand our medical jargon and acronyms and space we move in, but we also need to make sure that everyday Joe and Sally and Shakisha understand it as well. And so thank you and Dr. Basola for doing that. There are some medical questions, folks. Unfortunately, I'm not going to present them to Mark because he is not a physician. Even if he was, these are general sort of answers that would be given if Dr. B was still with us anyway. It lets me know I need to go a little bit harder in getting this segment of Your Healthy Java back. And part of that, thank you, Mark, for just the level of influence in reinvigorating that conversation with Big Pharma. And it you know, I still have say-so on what goes on this platform and what's presented. And so we'll work together on that. And so I appreciate you, sir. I want to make sure that folks know that in the comments, there is a hyperlink. It looks long, but there is, if you click that link, you will be guided to the Boston Public Health Commission's cancer page, where everything is there about cancer and screening, survivorship. Also navigate on that page to get more information about the status of health. I may not have the report name right that the commission issues every year.
Health of Boston.
Health of Boston.
Right.
Look for that data report as well. And Mark, I just want to let you know that we have a couple of folks in here that either got scheduled, is being scheduled, and there are folks in here. They actually set up a plan for when the sister goes to get her colonoscopy that they're going to get with her and make sure she gets home. Don't skip the appointment. I'll come and meet you. And so it's just a great contribution that you all have made. And so they're all going to medical appointments with their brother-in-laws and whatnot. So I appreciate you, sir. Please let us know anything else that you're doing. May 11th, keep that date open. The Joseph Betancourt Health Fair. Yep. We had Fenn, Rick Lee, and all of them that was with us at the Thelma Burns building last year. And folks walked out, sir, with prognosis, with medical treatment plans. A lot of inequities and mistreatment was addressed, and they took stuff back to their doctors and got it rectified. And so please hold that date for us, May 11th. We'll get the information out and invite you and other outreach workers at the commission to come and make sure we have as much information in place for the health fair as possible.
Looking forward to it. Joe Betancourt and Rick Lee and Bev Moy are colleagues. They're doing wonderful work. I work with them fairly often. I'm very familiar with their work. The one thing I do want to mention, you talked about that long URL. All people need is boston.gov/cancer.
Hold on. Let me put it right in here right now.
Boston.gov/cancer. Takes you right to our cancer page.
HTTP. Hold on. I'm going to put it short because I did it from there. And then, this came directly from the City Hall page. So it wasn't that short. Hold on. I'm going to make sure we got it right.
Boston.gov/cancer.
This should be it. Somebody please test this link and make sure I put it in right. HTTPS://. I think I got it right. Just let me know because we want to make sure the information's right. As far as hyperlink, they're not typing it. They'll just go in and click it. So this one should work, but this is one, if you don't click it now, this is the one that you should remember. And I'll also put the correct one on my page as well. My aunt is in here and was treated by Dr. Moy and got connected with her from the health fair last year. And so thank you for all that you do and the commission and those over at the various hospitals that are addressing this. And I didn't miss that point about the researchers. I'm actually on, it's not IRB.
We need more people from the community on IRBs. We don't have enough of that. There's actually a community seat on every IRB.
We need to talk offline because I didn't know that. I am on something with NIH with Dr. Ronke Patterson out of MGH. And so voices are slowly but surely, not boldly walking in and sitting at the table in these spaces. And so, Mark, thank you for this information today.
Absolute pleasure.
And we'll get the information over to you for May 11th.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. You take good care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Listen, folks, along with the information about the cancer and screenings and things like that, you also need to make sure that you know that you need health insurance, and it is definitely possible. I'm going to share this commercial with you and come back and share something with you. We'll be right back with you in a couple of seconds.
For the innovators, the dreamers, the risk takers, independent workers who keep our neighborhoods thriving, Connector Care from the Massachusetts Health Connector has plans for every lifestyle and budget.
Having access to affordable healthcare is for everyone in our community.
Connector Care plans help more people save on healthcare that covers all their needs. Find out if you qualify for Connector Care. Visit mahealthconnector.org or call 1-877-MA-ENROLL.
So what I wanted to share after that commercial is I went through the process yesterday. There's the platform, and then I do some consulting on the side and got a gig and got my first payment, and made sure I reported that to the powers that be that makes determination about health insurance. And it was a very good process. I'll be honest, I was very surprised because I thought, premiums was going to be high, and I'm making a little bit of money. But especially if you're an entrepreneur, go check out the Mass Health Connector. They are very flexible. They actually ask you after your income to calculate your business expenses. Closed the page, opened it back up again, made sure I was reading it right. I called, asked, do you see what I reported? Was I correct in reporting after expenses? They said yes. So believed in it when I did the commercial, and they knew I was getting ready to switch. I was waiting for that contract to kick in. So Mass Health Connector, go be sure to check it out. Listen, today was definitely an awesome episode filled with information. Thank you for those of you that are joining over on Instagram, those that follow Real Boston Media that are joining. Welcome to the Java Cafe. This is a community space where we share information about mental health, health. We do a little bit of pop culture stuff. We got some after darks coming soon as well. So thank all of you over on Instagram. New England Medical Association, Law of Pasta's on. My cousin Conchetta Green is on. The Connection Media is on over there for all things digital as well. Abstract Minor. Thanks for always raising awareness to these health topics, Jimmy. And that is B. Lormal. And from the Instagram, I can't figure out who you are, but over on Instagram, thank all of you for joining today. We will be with you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Now, as you know, Mayor Michelle Wu comes on every first Wednesday. She is still coming with us tomorrow, but it's the mayor and she has to go to 9:30. However, she's going across with Alex Edwards, who is going to be with us at 9 a.m. He and others are curating an event this Saturday, the New England Wealth Summit. Yours truly is being honored at that summit, and he's coming to talk about that. He's probably going to talk about financial health and wealth and wellness. Definitely a good brother. Actually was the broker that worked with me to be in when I moved at where I am now. And so he'll be with us at 9 a.m. And then at 9:30, Mayor Wu will be with us. So a few things so you all know. Yes, we're going to talk about participatory budgeting. We're going to talk about the BPS budget cuts. And we're also going to talk about a little bit of getting ready for the summer, and also the violence plan that's away from the summer. But we know Memorial Day is coming, and that's usually when things get interesting in that space. And so please be with us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for Alex Edwards, and then also with us at 9:30 with Mayor Wu. And then also tomorrow at 4 p.m. for those of you that work downtown, anywhere near City Hall, the JFK Federal Building, Haymarket, Boston Market, we're doing a live recording tomorrow at 4 p.m. Post-Agricultural Advocacy Day at the State House. They'll be advocating around food equity, support for individuals that need additional support, addressing the need to decrease food deserts in this state. And after that advocacy day, some elected officials, including Chris Worrell, Representative Russell Holmes, I'm not going to get into naming the other names because I don't want to butcher their names, but we have some elected officials from across the state that will join us. There is a social component to this. The tap room down at Boston Public Market will be open until 7 p.m. We're going to be there from about 4 to about 5:30, 5:45, chatting with elected officials, chatting with vendors from Boston Public Market. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., live from Boston Public Market, Java with Jimmy will be there. And on Thursday morning, just Jimmy, we're going to catch up with some things, have some things to possibly share with you about some updates in reference to some collaborations and partnerships. And I think that is it for me. UCB, y'all are up to an hour and a half. Belinda, good to see that you got that support. So I'll tag whatever flyer. I will post it, and then you can go ahead and what do you call it? You know what I mean, B. Thank you all for eat and drink. Yes, I will eat and drink. I've been doing better. I sat yesterday on my third little thing of water, and I was like, I'm doing better, hydrating. Some of you may have also saw that I have a couple of bruised ribs. It is getting better. I noticed this morning that certain exhales, and when I'm laughing, it isn't as bad. And so thank you all for checking up on that. All right, we're off of here. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with Alex Edwards and also our Mayor Wu at 9:30. Have a great day, everybody, and make it a great, awesome day. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.